What's up, guys? It's Noah and Sonetta, and we're making a little instructional video. This one's going to be the basics. So it's going to involve, what do these keys mean? What are the notes? How do I find a major scale? How do I find a minor scale? This is really great, just introductory music theory. I don't know a ton of music theory, but this will definitely get you started on just like what the stuff means. It also, I highly recommend watching this video and having a piano in front of you or a piece of paper in front of you, just so you could pause the video and like practice. That kind of stuff is where this knowledge comes from. It doesn't get learned by osmosis. You gotta actually do the work and do the learning for it to actually stick with you. So let's jump in. You'll notice that there are keys on the piano, right? There's white ones and there's black ones. The reason I picked this particular one is that it's called middle C. Middle C is a special name given to that particular note on the piano because that's the C note that's found in the middle of the piano. There's higher octaves of that C and lower octaves. How I look at the piano and how a lot of people look at the piano is they will look at it in clusters. There's a pattern. There's 2 black keys, 3 black keys, 2, 3, 2, 3. So I kind of use that pattern, 2 and 3. I look at that as those are the notes because you have the notes here. They will repeat from every little section. It'll go, and we call that an octave. So this C, middle C, is that one. The next octave up, the next sound, same note, just getting higher. At this baby piano, which is Sonetta's piano, you'll notice it starts with C, and it has 2 black keys and 3 black keys, and then you're at C again. They put these little dots here because they're teaching babies about octaves. This is the same note. This is the same note. This is the same note. And you just hear it. All right, so here are all the notes on the piano. We're going to start on this C. So C. The next one up, this is C sharp. The black keys are sharps and flats. So we have C, C sharp. D, we're just going up the alphabet. D, D sharp. E, and this is where there's no black key here. So right after E, we're on F. We have F, F sharp, G, G sharp. Now after G, there's no H in the musical alphabet. So after G, we go back to A. So C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. There's no B sharp. There's no C flat. So there's C right there. For today's purposes, we're going to think of these black keys as sharps, but you can reverse that and go backwards. So let's say I'm at A. This we could think of as, this is G. This note can be G sharp or it can be A flat. All right. I could think of it in terms of A flat because here's A. This is the one right before A, so A flat. Or I could think of it as the one after G, G sharp. Tomato, tomato. Before we go any further, ask yourself, am I feeling comfortable with identifying the notes on the piano? If you are, continue on in your journey with this video. If you're like, I think I need to practice, sit down at the piano and go through each one of those notes just like I did and do that for all the octaves. Do it from the lowest note on the piano to the highest note on the piano. Do it backwards. Do it 3 times. See if this stuff will stick. Let's talk about whole steps and half steps, sometimes called whole tones and semitones. It's the same thing, tomato, tomato. I like to think of it in terms of steps. And I learned it on the guitar, so I will envision this on the guitar when I'm kind of plotting out these scales in my head. However, it might be more fitting for you to do it on the piano. It's whatever your pleasure is, but it's helpful to know it on both things. I like to think of it as a step because it's kind of like a motion you're making. It's a step forward or a step backwards that you're making. And a step on the guitar looks like when you're stepping over one fret. That's a whole step. So you'll see the dots here just to make it easy for you to see it. When I start on the 3rd fret and I'm all on the low E. When I go from the 3rd fret, I step over, I go to the next dot. That's a whole step. Whole steps exist between the dots too. Whole step. The way to recognize it is that's the start of Happy Birthday. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday. A half step is when you are doing one half of that. It's a smaller step forward or a smaller step backwards. And it's just getting the next fret on the guitar. It's the next one up. That's just kind of why I like the guitar for this. Because the next one up, if I just do this, and I'm just moving my fingers and getting every single fret, that's a chromatic scale, but I'm moving in terms of half steps. They call that chromatics, when you're getting every single fret and you're not skipping. It's a good hand warming exercise, but I think you'd agree that most songs don't sound like this, because the theory behind it involves a lot of here's a whole step in this spot and then a half step at another spot. That's what makes scale special. We'll get to that. So let's just go through. I got G to A. That's a whole step. G to A. I got A to B. That's a whole step. Where it gets funky is from B to C. This is C right after B. So B to C is a half step because they're right next to each other. So from B to C is a half step. There's no B sharp. There's no C flat. So this is a half step. Half step. Sounds like Jaws. Da-na, 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 da-na. And you will find that anywhere. Da-na, 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 da-na. So from B to C, that's a half step. That's where the funk is. Not the funk genre, but the weirdness in all of this. From B to C is a half step. But from C to D is a whole step. And you'll notice on the guitar, if I was at G, A, B, I'm on the dots. Everything's good. This is easy. I'm on the dots. And then now I'm off the dots. Oh, geez. And then C to D is a whole step. D to E is a whole step. And then the other weird thing is that there's no E sharp, no F flat. From E to F, that's another half step. So that's another half step. That's where the weirdness is. So that was a G major scale. Let's make a connection between the guitar and our knowledge of whole steps and half steps and the piano. Well, fret 1 on the guitar is F. There's F. Here's fret 2. It's the next fret in line. On the piano, think of it, I'm on a white key. The next note in line is the black key. The black keys kind of fill in the spaces between the white keys most of the time. So that's a half step. It's the next one up. When I have to step over or make a whole step on a guitar, I'm stepping over the next fret. So I would go on the guitar, I'd go from the first fret, I'd step over the second fret, I'd go to the third fret. So whole step is stepping over the next key in line. Now, if I am on a black key and I'm starting here and I want to start on F sharp, I have to step over, if I want a whole step, I have to step over this white key. That's a half step. That's the next note in line. So if I want a whole step from F sharp, I have to step over G and get to G sharp. So a whole step is stepping over the next key. Now we'll see here, B, there's no black key to step over. So when I go from B, I go to the next white key in line. That's a half step. I didn't step over any note here. That's not happy birthday. Happy birthday is whole step. Jaws half step. I'm on C right now. C to D, because there's a C sharp. C sharp exists. C to D is a whole step. D to E is a whole step because D sharp exists. However, there's no black key right here. That's because there's no E sharp. There's no F flat. There's nothing to put right there. So that's where you have a half step between white keys. That's one of the spots. E to F. C, D, E, F. So if I want to play Happy Birthday from here, I need the whole step. That's going to be going up here. So we have C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G. So from F to G, that's a whole step. We have G, G sharp, A. G to A is a whole step. A sharp exists. So A to B is a whole step. But similar situation as before, there's no B sharp. There's no C flat. They don't exist. There's no black key here. So from B to C, that's a half step. Jaws theme. If I want to make it a whole step and play Happy Birthday from here, I have to go up a little bit more to get that Happy Birthday. We're going to use that whole step, half step knowledge to create scales. This is the fun and this is the work that you just got to do. Once you get familiar and you can kind of envision the guitar fretboard in your head or the piano, I like to sit down with this stuff like before bed or while I'm watching TV, kind of like a Sudoku or crossword puzzle, and just write out scales and just practice the theory of this and really practice it. It does help while you're learning to have an instrument in hand to double check. You'll see the process that we're going to take you through right now. So we want to make a major scale. This is the recipe for major scales. Involves a half step between 3 and 4 of the scale and a half step between 7 and 8. Everything else is all whole steps between them. Well, what does that mean? I want C major, so I'm going to start with C. Okay? That's the start of my scale. If I want C major, that's the first letter I'm putting down. Then I'm going to organize the letters out, and then I'm going to put in the sharps and flats, also known as accidentals. For our purposes, we're only going to put in sharps. So I have C. What's the next letter up in the alphabet? Oh, man. After C is D? Ah, yes it is. A, B, C, D. Okay, cool. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. I do know this. All right, again, you're going from G to A because after G or G sharp, we go back to A. So there I have it. The very first degree of the scale. Now, all of these, we call them a scale degree. This one is our 1, or we also call it the root. So we have the 1 or the root. This would be the second. This is the third, because 1, 2, 3. Here's our 4th. Here's our 5th, our 6th, our 7th, our 8th. But it's the same note, so it's kind of like that root. Well, it is that root, just an octave up. And then you could repeat that scale an octave up and go an octave up and an octave up or an octave down. It just repeats over and over again. A lot of music is just figuring out patterns. That's why learning this stuff is so powerful, because if you know this, you could do any major scale in any key. And you could work out those notes and then take chords from it. It's easy. It's just a little bit of work and getting used to these things. So I have my half step between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. So here's 3 and 4. I like to show the half step. Let's get a different color. Let's have fun. I want to put my half steps in green. And I like to do this for the half step. I got this from Steve Stein. He's a really good online guitar teacher. But he said, always, before you do any work, you put your half steps in so you don't forget. So I know I got a half step here. That's what this little arrow means. And I got a half step there. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to think, and I'm going to check with the instrument, do I have a whole, so I need a whole step between C and D, a whole step between 2 and 3, D and E. I need a half step here. I need a whole step, whole step, whole step, and then a half step at the end. So let's check that out. I'm going to find C. Again, we find C by looking for these clusters, the 2 and the 2 black keys, 3 black keys. That's one set of notes. That's one octave. So you could see me. I'm going to start down here. So there's C. There's my first note. C to D. Well, there's that half step right there. There's a black key. And that sounds like that's Happy Birthday. That's a whole step. Okay? So I got C to D. That checks. Let's look at D to E now. There is that half step right there. That exists. So that works. So, and again, you could also check it with Do, Re, Mi. Do, Re, Mi, Do, Re, Mi. Okay, so now let's go from E to F. Hear that slight difference? That sounds like Jaws to me. That's a half step. But we need a half step between 3 and 4, so that's great. There's no black key to get, so this is a half step. That's Jaws, so we're good so far. Now let's look F to G. That's a whole step. And again, it's just if I have this black key here, if I'm skipping over that, that's the whole step. I didn't have a black key here, so white to white becomes a half step. So we're on G. Now we're looking G to A. That's a whole step. That works. Let's look at A to B. That works. We need a half step between B and C. There's no black key here. That is our half step at the end. Doesn't sound like Happy Birthday. Sounds like a shark is chasing you. Very different. So that is how you would work this out. And I have all these notes here. Now I can do it. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Oh, you might have noticed something about C major. It's only white keys. C major and A minor are the two scales that only have white keys. That's why a lot of people like playing in C major or A minor, because you don't touch the black keys. It's easy. So now let's look at one that's a little bit more tricky. We'll look at A major. I want to do A major. So I'm going to start this. Here's my root or my 1. There's my root or the 8th or the octave. I have my second scale.
There's this third. That's a magical scale degree. There's a perfect fourth is what we would call that. There's a perfect fifth. Oh, that's a magical one too. Then we have a 6 and a 7. And then we're back to the 8.
Now, the recipe is major scale. There are half steps between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. So here's 3 and 4. I'm going to put in a half step signal. This tells me put in a half step. Make sure this is a half step when you're checking your work. Between 7 and 8, that's a half step. So now let's go through and make sure we have everything we need. So we're going to find A. So here's, I use C, this as a guide. I know C is this one. C, D, E, F, G, A. That's it. So now let's make sure we got everything in place. I'm looking from A to B. I need a whole step. A to B is a whole step. It crosses over that little half step key. A, B. That checks. From B to C. B to C. Ooh. That sounds like Jaws. But from B to C, that's not a whole step. Yes, I'm going from a white key to a white key. B to C is a half step. There's no black key here between the two. So, B to C. That's a problem. I need to fix this because I need a whole step. We got to get the black key involved. So that's a C sharp. So I have A, B, C, do, re, mi. And you can kind of sing that to check yourself. Let's try it the other way. Do, re, mi, do, re, mi. That doesn't sound like sound of music. There's no black key here, so from B to C is a half step. We want a whole step between our 2 and a 3. So I'm going to go in and I'm adding that sharp right there. That's that accidental. Now let's check this out. So A, do, re, mi. Then they got C to D. That's a half step. I go from the black to the white. So do, re, mi, fa. Okay, so that checks out. Let's go from D to E. Yep, we skip over the black key that's there, so that's a whole step. All right, let's check this out. From E to F. So I'm on E to F, E to F. That sounds like Jaws. And there's no black key here. So E to F is a half step. E to F. There's no E sharp. So that's a half step. So I need to change something because this is supposed to be a whole step here. This is a problem. This is wrong. So I need to think, well, I need a whole step. There's a half step. I go up one. So that's all I'm doing. If I have a half step between this one and this one, I go a little bit up with that black key and that helps me out. So this is actually F sharp because there's F, F sharp. Okay. Then we have F sharp to G. Oh no. That's not correct. I want a whole step, so I'm adding another accidental. And that actually helps me out because look, I need a half step between 7 and 8. There's G sharp to A. G sharp A. So now let's play the whole thing, see if we got do, re, mi. So we're at A. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And I could go as slow as I need to with that to make sure I got the right notes here. I want to make sure I'm hitting the right stuff. So now we're going to work on minor scales. Minor scales, very important, especially in our lives in Glowstone. We do a lot of stuff in minor keys. So you want to have some minor scales and some minor understandings on what makes a minor chord under your belt. So minor, when people talk about it, minor sounds evil. That's why we love them so much at Glowstone. They sound dark, they sound evil. They're most rock tunes, that epic nature usually will come from minor. Major sounds nice, happy, peaceful, uplifting. Here's the difference between the major and the minor. Ready? For major, as we discussed, when we go through and we put our half steps in, we put them, our half steps are between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. That's where they want the half steps. That makes the major sound. Minor, the half steps occur in a different place. They occur between the 2nd and 3rd scale degree and the 5th and 6th scale degree. So we'll do the same thing, but now we just follow this recipe for where to put those little brackets in. So I'm going to start with everyone's favorite key. We're going to start with A minor. So again, my root is going to be A. So there's the root. Here's the 1. Then we go up the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. We go from the root back to the root. The recipe says half steps go between 2 and 3. So before I'm doing any work and checking any of this, I'm going to look to where to put those half steps in. They're going between 2 and 3, and they're going between 5 and 6. So I'm looking for A to start. I know that this is a C because it's the start of this little cluster that I'm constantly referring to find my notes. So this is C. So I want A. So C, D, E, F, G, A. I'm going to start here so you can see me a little better. So now I'm looking and I'm following the minor recipe. I need a whole step between A and B. I have that. I didn't hit this black half step key. So I need my half step between B and C. I hear jaws. So that also, because there's no black key here, that's our half step. So that is not do, re, mi. That's the evil version do, re, mi. Do, re, mi. Here's do, re, mi. Here's the major. Do, re, mi, do, re, mi, do, re, mi. Here's the minor. Oh, creepy, suspenseful, spooky. That's why we love minor keys. So that's checking out so far. Let's see if we got that whole step between C and D. We do. D and E. We do. E and F. Do we have, is this a whole step or a half step? Ask yourself. Whole step or half step? I don't have a black key between. I'm going between E to F. Is that a whole step or a half step? That is a half step. That's a half step. So this works. E to F, half step. I haven't had to put a mark on this paper yet. One of the joys of A minor. F to G, I need a whole step. F to G, checks out, and G to A. Okay, so here's the minor scale. Ooh, yeah. Here's major scale. You'll see the difference here as we raise this to a C sharp. F is an F sharp. That was an F sharp the first time, and G sharp. So, but we have A. Now you're probably wondering, Noah, what's the point of this? Well, the point of this, as I've said before, it makes it easy for you to understand how these chords are made. So if you can do this, and I'm not saying you have to commit all this to memory, it's just, this will really strengthen the understanding of like, how do I get an F sharp minor chord? Say, okay, I know how to find the 1, the flat third, the minor third, and the 5th. I can make an F sharp minor chord like that. Again, this work takes time. It takes energy and effort. I really don't think it's overwhelming. You could sit in bed or sit down with your favorite TV show and kind of work on this like it's a crossword puzzle. That's really what helped me. Eventually, we'll talk about committing the circle of fifths to memory, because it will really, really start to click and kind of be a little bit more memorized if you can memorize the circle of fifths. You can do it. Countless musicians across the world have committed this stuff to memory. It is just like another form of literacy, another form of math. Your brain can handle this. It's very possible. I am not a rocket scientist. I have these basics figured out, and it's really, really like, I think of it the before time and the after time. And for me, it was during COVID. This shit opened my world, and I have not a great understanding of music theory, but a better one because it's just, I know where these chord values come from.